Childcare positions will never be filled.
So I just quit my job, after 34 days, as an assistant director of a daycare, and man, y'all who use daycare are in serious trouble. The staff called out every day and I was forced to work in the classroom and ensure that the daycare was compliant in case the state ever came in to do an audit. It was terrible. I was on salary, which was a measly 18 per hour after all of the taxes taken out of my check, but of course I never saw overtime. Since I was management, I was expected to work 7 days a week, sometimes from open to close with no break.
They literally scorned me if I wanted to leave to get something to eat. Absolutely not. I experienced high blood pressure, swollen feet and constant fatigue in just my short time of 34 days working there. The teachers they hire are young and straight out of high school, so they have no idea of the seriousness of the job, and quite frankly I didn't have the patience to keep being blamed by the owner over things out of my control. Nobody else except young people out of high school would work there because unfortunately, they only paid them $14.50. And they were the easiest to manipulate into working overtime in the eyes of the owner.
I would never work in a daycare again, and I feel very sorry for people who use daycare because the amount they pay never goes to the staff salary, it goes to the owner's lifestyle. Oh, and there was no working central air in this daycare, might I add. Oh, and I had to be the chef some days as well, all for a measly 18 per hour. Yeah, childcare jobs will never be filled. Ever.
Daycare and childcare workers are some of the most poorly trained and poorly paid people on the planet.
And people wonder why we have stopped having children.
Why isn't it standard that if the worker ends up having to do 2 or more jobs for a temporary reason, if someone calls out or a role isn't hired for in time and others have to make up that work on top of their own jobs, that they aren't automatically paid double or triple while they do it? If that extra wage was the industry standard, people would be falling over themselves to pick up the extra work. Oh, we're out 2 staff today, and if I come in I get paid $54 an hour instead of $18? See you in 20.
I had a friend from Community Collage work with kids from a third party at a school. She said 1 year, then when the school district was hiring teacher aides she applied, and I gave a reference and she eventually got the job. She says this is so much better pay and off summers. For her it was a step up, from $14 per hour to $1,617 per hour. She is happier. Never going to be a teacher, just an aide, and she was like, this is still better. And now with benefits and such. That work. Me, Vape, at least you don't have to do childcare. Her, yes.
Best day ever is quitting day, lol. I worked in a daycare for 5 years and switched to being a nanny. You can't pay me enough now to do group care. I was making $11.50 in Tennessee, working 76 with 4 infants. And now I make 17 hours with 1. Lol, I'll never go back. I worked at a daycare for a few months and it was terrible. I worked mainly with 1-year-olds and I was instructed to take their plates if they weren't using their utensils correctly. And I was also not allowed to eat in front of them. About half of the kids I looked after were children of high school students and were not well taken care of at home or provided the daycare with what they needed, i.e. diapers. So I wasn't sure how they were going to learn if not shown. So I regularly brought my own cereal to eat there with the kids, giving them someone to model after. I also only took their plates if they were obviously done eating and just playing in it, lol. I was supposed to have another teacher every day and never did. So I was solely in charge of getting 58 1-year-olds into chairs for eating, out of chairs for class time, cleaning everything, getting them down for naps, changing diapers, etc. It was a very taxing job and I listened to a lot of Disney music of my choice. I was not well trained and did my best to be an entertaining, enriching environment. I had no kids of my own, was like 21, and no education of child development beyond extremely basic ideas. My poor kids were probably very bored. My understanding is that childcare centers are not particularly profitable. Even with stupidly low wages, childcare should be heavily subsidized by the state for pretty much everyone. Like 5x the federal poverty rate. At least the fact that many to most families struggle with the costs is insane. The problem is: 1. Both parents need to work to afford to live. 2. Daycare is way too expensive for parents to afford it. 3. They aren't paying the workers enough. 4. If they did pay workers enough, daycare would be too expensive to make financial sense for parents, thus killing the daycare business. If wages were good enough that only one parent needed to work, that would solve the problem. And if both parents work, they could afford more expensive daycare that actually pay their employees well. If we had a 4-day work week and people could choose those 4 days, that would require daycare only 1 day a week. This one isn't ideal because the couple would hardly get to spend time with each other. A 3-day work week would work, but I doubt we'll get that. Remote work would solve the problem too. If it couldn't be fully remote, coordinating between the two parents would certainly be possible. However, some jobs can't be done remotely, especially the service industry. Employers that require you on site should be responsible for funding childcare. Their pockets are deep, so they can pay the employees what they're worth. NYS has implemented something where a private citizen can qualify to be paid by the state for babysitting, i.e., you have a neighbor or good friend who you trust watch them, and the state pays them for it.
My mom is currently in the process of setting up something similar between me, my sister, and some of her friends to help care for my dad with rather advanced Alzheimer's.
I worked at a daycare preschool that hired me at $12.50 per hour. I had years of prior experience. Teacher at elementary schools plus decade of infant care. Relevant degrees ensuing. And an outstanding qualification. Multilingual. Could already use one of the languages implemented by the school that the other staff generally had. To learn from the supervisors or the same flashcards the children saw in lessons. The daycare changed directors halfway through my background check. The new director condescendingly commented, "I have no relevant experience. What are you doing right now? Really?" Quote, and bumped me to 11 per hour non-negotiable. I spoke to another recent hire whose experience was the same. Promised 12.50. Bumped to 10.50 upon showing up for work. Our hours were 10 a day for 50 a week. Oh, but we don't pay overtime. 100 hours on a check and IY seems short? No, that's just your shift. Oh, and you get paper checks a week after the pay period. Maybe more, if we leave them at home. Yes, the owner forgot my first paycheck. 2 weeks in a row. The week I finally received it, she made me clock out 30 minutes early and wait in the lobby for another 40 while she had someone bring her the check to sign. My lower back has damage never before indicated from just a month working there. Their license hadn't been renewed or the building inspected in 2.5 years. The state had simply missed them. But it was staff's fault. The broken ceiling tiles exposed asbestos and we had no cabinet space. I am so passionate about my career. Education is what I care about. Childcare is where my talents lie, as I've done it my entire life. I will never work in a preschool or daycare again because everywhere I've seen, the situation is horrifically similar. I'm glad you got out too. Op. I recently interviewed for a preschool teaching position at a daycare. They offered me $15.50 per hour with the only option for healthcare offered at 30+ hours. With the hours of operation, I'd have to work 10-hour days. They aren't open on weekends. Leaving my dog home alone, not including commute time. Even then, they only pay for 1/2 of your coverage. I have years of experience in the classroom, and they pay absolutely nothing. Pitiful. I worked at a women's shelter taking care of babies, toddlers, kids, and teens. It was me and maybe one other person. It was depressing, pensive face. I'm a nanny. I love my job. I work in my own home. The kids come to me. And I have complete control how many clients I take at a time. I'd never do daycare. That's just the fast track to burnout and sadness. I'm a lead preschool teacher in an HCOL area of the Pacific Northwest. I'm finally making $25 an hour. I've been an early educator for over 20 years. Of course now I'm stuck staying at this center despite all its flaws because I make too much to find comparable wages in ECE. My center recently posted a similar position for $20 an hour. Guess we really don't want to pay too much. Can confirm. I used to be a Montessori teacher. Trained and certified with years of experience. Every Montessori school I worked at was run the same as a daycare. With poorly trained and young staff like those you described. I was making $16 per hour as a lead teacher. And couldn't afford to send my kids there if I had them. And that's why I quit. Because I did get married and had a kid on the way. And despite all my experience I couldn't afford to support my new family. But the owner had a shiny new Tesla. So that's cool. Why my children will never see the inside of a daycare. I briefly worked at a corporate daycare and I got bronchitis because I was frequently guilted into coming into work while sick. My doctor had to tell my director on the phone that I could not be around a child. I was chased out of it by that director's replacement, and I will never trust any corporate daycare with a dime of my money. When they are bad, they are horrifying. I worked in childcare for 7 years and in a daycare for 6 of them. In some ways it really was terrible. Some of those teachers should not have been working with kids in any way. We definitely had teachers who didn't take it seriously and called out all the time or tried to leave early. Many times I was left alone when I shouldn't have been and needed extra help. It's such a toxic place to work, and not because of the kids. One reason I don't want kids is because I would never feel safe sending them to a daycare. We're paying 28 Canadian dollars and 75 cents. 21 United States dollars and 19 cents. For frontline ECE. Plus benefits. Pension. Health. Dental. Disability insurance. 3 weeks paid vacation. Which grows 1 day every year until it maxes at 7 weeks. 12 paid sick days per year. The limit is 5 kids per caretaker, right? Why not have a home daycare and charge $6 per hour per kid? $30 an hour trumps whatever you're getting paid working for another facility and is a huge slash in price against them. I understand not every home can be child-proofed. However, I do believe it's an option to consider or look into. Running your own place and putting an earnest ad out. So, if daycare costs $1,400, $1,700 per month per child, where does all that dollar go? If the workers are paid so poorly?
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.